tuning frequency 12562 MHz, symbol rate 30 Mbps, orbital position 68.5 degree east, and horizontal polarization. You can also keep in touch with episodes of our programs via these social media platforms. For inquiries, please call 070-3265-6544 or mail us via inquiries@acnntv.com. ACNN, reaching the world with the undiluted Word of God.
Welcome. This is News on the Hour, and here are the stories making the headlines. The Diocesan and Mission of the Lagos Anglican Diocese, the Right Reverend Dr. Humphrey Bamishebi Olumakai, has reiterated the biblical truth that Christians' faith does not insulate them from problems. Ahead of the 2021 Standing Committee of the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion, the Secretariat has urged and requested prayers be made for the success of the meeting scheduled to hold next month. Plus, Minister of Health Osage Hanire says Nigeria has secured an additional 41 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. Now let's take you to the stories in details. The Diocesan and Mission of Lagos Anglican Diocese, Right Reverend Dr. Humphrey Bamishebi Olumakai, has reiterated the biblical truth that Christians' faith does not insulate them from problems. The bishop made this statement in his sermon at the Send Forth ceremony held in honor of Venerable Nwakerendo to commemorate his 70th birthday and retirement. The bishop encouraged Christians to always take solace in the fact that God has promised them his presence at all times. Regardless of what they are passing through, Bishop Olumakai celebrated the faithfulness of God in the life of the retiring Venerable for ending his ministry gloriously and for all the bountiful blessings he received in the course of his service, noting that God has kept his promise never to leave or forsake him. On a final note, the bishop stated that the real ornament of life is a humble and quiet spirit, as God has declared in Isaiah 7:15 that he will dwell with him who has a contrite and humble spirit, while advising Christians to always abide in Christ, who is divine. The Secretariat of the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion have requested that prayers be intensified for the success of the Standing Committee meeting scheduled to hold next month, February 8 to 12, 2020 at the All Saints Cathedral, Onitsha, Anambra State. In a letter titled Prayer Points for the Standing Committee meeting in Onitsha 2021 and made available by the Venerable Geshe Paul Dajuru, General Secretary, Church of Nigeria, Christians, especially the Anglican faithful, were encouraged to pray that the counsel of the Lord alone be established at the Standing Committee meeting, and for the Church of Nigeria and her leaders, the primate, the dean, archbishops and bishops, that God will continue to guide them as they lead the Church of God in seeking the kingdom of God and his righteousness in all things and everywhere, including the primate's wife, Mrs. Angela Ndokoba, who will lead the women organization meeting at Onitsha. The letter also requests that prayers be made for the ecclesiastical province of the Niger. The Archbishop, the Most Reverend Alexander Ibezim, the Bishop on the Niger, the Right Reverend Owen Nwokolo, and the members of the Diocese on the Niger that are hosting the meeting. Most importantly, for Johnny Mercies for all that would be attending. Apologies, the meeting is scheduled for February 8 to 12, 2021 and not 2020 as mentioned. All right, moving on. Following his resignation as the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General T.Y. Buratai has officially handed over the mantle of leadership of the Nigerian Army to the new Chief of Army Staff, Major General Ibrahim Attahiru. The handover ceremony held at the Army headquarters in Abuja, giving way for the new Chief of Army Staff, Major General Ibrahim Attahiru, to officially resume duty. Following the retirement of the immediate past service chiefs, President Muhammadu Buhari had approved the appointment of their replacements. Addressing the new service chiefs, Buhari had charged them to be patriotic in their discharge of duties, stressing that Nigeria is in a state of emergency. Hence, the new service chiefs must serve with great dedication. Meanwhile, human rights lawyer Mr. Femi Falana, SAN, has said the nation has continued in its habit of operating under an atmosphere of impunity. Speaking on the appointment of new service chiefs, Mr. Falana said, going on to appoint the new leaders of the armed forces without the confirmation by the two chambers of the National Assembly constitutes a discharge for the rule of law, constitutes a disregard for the rule of law. Mr. Falana said the provisions within the Section 218 of the Constitution empower the National Assembly to approve the appointment of the service chiefs. According to the rights lawyer, the new service chiefs have only been nominated by the President and are awaiting confirmation by the legislators. Falana was of the opinion that the whole essence of a presidential system of government is to ensure that there are checks and balances. On COVID-19, Minister of Health Osage Hanire has said that Nigeria has secured an additional 41 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. However, the date of the vaccine's delivery into the country remains unknown as vaccine manufacturers struggle to meet global demand in time. The 41 million doses were secured as part of efforts by an African Union task team to help countries on the continent gain equitable access to vaccines. The AU earlier had announced that it had secured an additional 400 million doses of the vaccines for the continent. This comes on top of an earlier announcement by the AU that it had secured 270 million vaccine doses. Many African countries, including Nigeria, are yet to start vaccination programs, even as the number of COVID-19 cases continue to rise across the continent. Nigeria was expected to take delivery of 100,000 vaccine doses via the WHO-backed COVAX sharing facility by the end of January, but Minister Hanire confirmed that the timeline has now been shifted to February. You are still watching News on the Hour, and still to come. Chairman of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency says the agency will rid Nigeria of illicit drug trafficking and consumption. That story will come your way after the break.
Yes, my name is Right Reverend Ephraim Okechukwu Ikako. By the grace of God, I am the bishop Anglican Diocese of Amich in the province of the Niger. I want to encourage you to keep watching SNN. It's very wonderful, it's very enriching, it's so blaring and preparing you both for now and eternity. Keep watching and God bless you.
Timberlock Wood Preservative, the wood preservative brand leader in Africa. Follow us on all our social media platforms at Timberlock Africa or visit www.timberlockmfg.com. Timberlock Wood Preservative, the wood preservative brand leader in Africa.
Welcome back. For more on our top stories, please visit our website at acnntv.com or our social media platforms on facebook.com or youtube.com/ACNN-TV. To be up to date with our news and other programs, download the VM Africa app from Android and iOS stores. You can as well also advertise your goods and services on ACNN-TV. Continuing with the news, Mohammed Buba Marwa, the chairman CEO of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLEA, says the agency will rid Nigeria of illicit drug trafficking and consumption. Since his assumption of office 2 weeks ago, the former military governor of Lagos State has continued to warn against drug trafficking in the country, while signing a new memorandum of understanding with the United States government on how to strengthen Nigeria's war against drugs. Marwa said the agency will be hard on drug traffickers, exporters and importers operating in the country. Beth Leonard, the United States ambassador to Nigeria, in her remarks said the visit was to congratulate Marwa on his appointment. She said the American government would also like to know the agency's priority, present and future direction under his leadership. Now, Amnesty International has accused the Nigerian government of attempting to cover up the killing of a dozen citizens during peaceful protests in Lagos last October. A youth-led demonstrations in Nigeria began against police abuse, quickly spiraling in border calls for reform. But they ended weeks later when security forces shot at demonstrators in Lagos, killing at least 12 people, according to Amnesty International. At a judicial panel, the army denied using live rounds, but the government vowed to disband the much-hated police unit, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SAS, which had been the main target of protests over brutality. Amnesty International challenged the Nigerian government to suspend accused officials pending investigations and to ensure victims access to justice. In November, the Lagos State government set up a panel of inquiry to investigate the bloodshed and wider allegations of abuses by SAS, featuring testimonies by the army that presented videos to back its claim. The government has promised a string of reforms in response to the protests and disbanded SAS, replacing it with another security forces called SWAT. And on corruption, Transparency International has released its 2020 Corruption Perception Index, CPI. The body noted that the CPI revealed that persistent corruption was undermining health care systems and contributing to democratic backsliding amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Nigeria was ranked 149 out of the 180 countries assessed. Transparency International said countries that perform well on the index invest more in healthcare, are better able to provide universal health coverage, and are less likely to violate democratic norms and institutions or the rule of law. Delia Ferreira Rubio, chair of the Transparency International, said COVID-19 is not just a health and economic crisis, it is a corruption crisis, and one that the world is currently failing to manage. The 2020 edition of the CPI ranks countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption, drawing on 13 expert assessments and surveys of business executives. It uses a scale of 0, meaning a highly corrupt, to 100, very clean. Nearly half of countries have been stagnant on the index for almost a decade, indicating stalled government efforts to tackle the root causes of corruption. More than 2/3 score below 50. Now to some sports stories. The Nigerian Wrestling Federation, NWF, has announced plans to prepare the country's wrestlers for the Africa-Oceania Olympic qualifying tournament from 2nd to 4th April and the preceding 2021 African Championships from 6th to 11th April, both in El Jadida, Morocco. Team Nigeria wrestlers returned to action for the first time in almost a year at the recently concluded Baraza Champions Tournament in Yenagoa, the Bayelsa State capital. Nigerian Wrestling Federation President Honorable Daniel Igali said that the wrestlers will commence preparations for the event in Morocco with the forthcoming National Sports Festival in Benin, Edo State, from 14th to 28th February, before entering an intensive close campaign in Yenagoa a week after the festival. The Olympic champion added that the plan is to have each wrestler compete in about 15 bouts prior to the qualifiers in Morocco. The International Olympic Committee, IOC, President Thomas Bach has stated that relocating the postponed Olympic and Paralympic Games to another city is not possible, following reports that Florida has offered to host if Tokyo backs out due to coronavirus pandemic. Speaking to 200 journalists during a virtual press after an IOC executive board meeting, which focused largely on preparations for Tokyo 2020, Bach reiterated that IOC's commitment towards the delivery of a successful and safe Games in Tokyo, adding that the many speculations about whether or not the Games will go ahead have only been hurtful. The IOC president said in the last couple of days he had consultation calls with the international federations, the National Olympic Committees, and got reports from the athletes' representatives, who all gave assurances of their commitment to the Tokyo 2020. You're still watching News on the Hour. To end the news now, another look at the major stories. The Diocesan and Mission of Lagos Anglican Diocese, the Right Reverend Dr. Humphrey Olumakaye, has reiterated the biblical truth that Christians' faith does not insulate them from problems. Ahead of 2021 Standing Committee meeting, the Secretariat of the Church of Nigeria requests prayers be made for the success of the meeting scheduled to hold next month. Minister of Health Osage Ehenire says Nigeria has secured an additional 41 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines. And that's the size of this edition of News on the Hour. Thank you for watching. I remain Charles Philip Wakalam. Bye-bye.
I wouldn't want to say we're in a state of anarchy, as it is, because no one is sure of his life walking on the streets anywhere today in the Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in the words of national security, I think we are in a state of emergency.
Nobody will say that what is happening in the country is that anybody that says that is very, very economical with the truth.
Once a law is made in any nation, nobody is above the law. If a church has a business entity, the church should pay their own taxation.